So, please can you provide us with a bit of background on Nebulon? I guess the sort of why, the what, the who.
Yeah. Well, sure. So I think probably the most important place to start is the why, right? It starts a few years ago, actually, with a conversation CMAC, our CEO, had with a financial services CIO. And the question was in the context of enterprise storage. CMAC was still handling the 3PAR platform at that time. And he was talking with the CIO, and the CIO's vision, for his on-prem data, he has lots of data that, cannot or should not go to the cloud for reasons of service levels or cost or governance. And so despite the success of 3PAR, the question from this individual was, look, why does storage for my mission critical apps need to come from this separate, expensive external device requiring a bunch of specialized expertise? And the CIO went on to say, look, I've got tens of thousands of servers, each often with a couple of dozen unused drive slots in them. Why can't I just have my mission critical storage for my apps right in my app server? And, CMAC is a smart guy. And he basically said, look, you would need to let me put software on each of your application servers. So think HCI and how that model works. And CMAC's view was, look, you would hate me for that, because as you know, there's certain restrictions that come with HCI and why you're still running arrays. And that isn't your answer. CMAC also knew that management of tens of thousands of server nodes was going to be one of the problems that needs to be handled, because the current one-to-one relationship of the administration interface for either arrays one at a time or HCI a cluster at a time just wouldn't work in that kind of scale. And if you know CMAC, he can't resist attacking a complex problem. I'm the guy who took apart the Rubik's Cube and put it back together with all sides matching, right? Immediate gratification is my middle name. But CMAC is a different guy. And this challenge stayed with him for about 2 years before he worked out effectively how to solve it. And that's, that's basically what we're here to talk about today. But at the highest level, the vision is a self-service infrastructure for application owners, starting with a solution for mission critical storage. To get to your question about the who, the founders were a group of ex-3PAR technology and go-to-market execs, including David Scott, who was our CEO at 3PAR. He's our executive chairman here. And CMAC Nazari, who was the chief software architect for 3PAR. I've worked with CMAC for 20 years now. He's the CEO of Nebulon. The engineering team is comprised of cloud security and storage experts. Our cloud team is led by a guy from Snap, so he gets scale. Virtually all of the storage team have 3PAR DNA. And our commercial team, or go-to-market team, comes from 3PAR, SolidFire, Pure, and other companies who totally get what enterprise and service provider customers need from their storage infrastructures. And lastly, the where. Our worldwide headquarters is based in Fremont, California, here in Silicon Valley. We've now expanded to a couple of offices here. We've got a development center up in Bellevue, Washington. We call our Northwest Development Center. We have an EMEA development center in Belfast, Northern Ireland. And we've got a number of sales offices, including our West Coast branch here in the Valley, an EMEA sales headquarters in London, UK. And then next month, actually, we're opening our East Coast sales branch in New York City.
Okay, and you've hinted at that with all the offices, but I believe it's about now you're coming out of what everyone loves to call stealth mode. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, it's super exciting. I got to tell you, we officially started this journey back in November 2018 in a small single room office in Palo Alto. But actually, unofficially, we started much earlier than that, and we had regular all hands meetings at CMAX dinner table at his home in Los Altos, the good old days, right? And since then, we've dropped a few hints along the way about what we're doing, but not a lot on how we intended to do it. We kind of wanted to, hold on to that until we had it in the hands of customers. So roll the clock forward about 18 months, and we're now here ready to introduce cloud-defined storage. And for folks listening, you have to forget everything you know about how enterprise class storage is done to really align with the CIO's vision and where it's going. So it's a totally different approach.
Okay, so I mean that brings us on neatly. You've mentioned cloud-defined storage. So can you give us a sort of high level of, well, I guess a bit of the technology without giving away the sort of secrets, but as to this new approach and the technology that it's based on?
Yeah. Cloud-defined storage, in the simplest terms, is on-premises, server-based, enterprise class storage. It consumes no application server, CPU, memory, or network resources. There's literally no software that we add to the application server. And the storage assets are defined and managed entirely through the cloud. We start by replacing the storage controller in the customer's application server. Think like a RAID card or fiber channel card. That goes away, and we replace that with a service processing unit, or SPU. Think of the SPU as kind of a modern cloud managed endpoint that comes in the form of a PCIe card. And that card transforms the internal disk capacity in the server to hypervisor and container agnostic storage with all the enterprise data services traditionally only available with enterprise storage arrays. Unlike arrays, however, these storage assets are monitored, administered, and automated from a secure cloud-based control plane called Nebulon On, and that's really where all the magic happens.
Okay, and in terms of the benefits of this approach as opposed to the more traditional storage model?
Yep. Yeah, there's, I'd say, boil it down to maybe 4 things. First, economics. With cloud-defined storage, you can eliminate the purchase of those expensive external storage arrays and ultimately reduce the cost of mission-critical storage by up to 50%. Beyond that, you can literally deploy infrastructure as you need it, a server at a time, an application at a time, without needing to invest upfront in the cost of a storage array in anticipation that workloads and servers will eventually come. So that's number 1, economics. Number 2, it's this notion of always up-to-date infrastructure. Since the control plane is provided as a service in the cloud, it's always up to date. And for many storage professionals or infrastructure professionals responsible for storage, array controller software updates are the worst. When a new release is available, super important to get on there. It might be a security update or an important fix. The time and risk involved to get a fleet of arrays up to date, nights, weekends, whatever, can take months. And just when you're finished with one update, lo and behold, a new one appears and you start it all over again. We say it's like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. It's endless and painful. In our model, new features are made available instantly through cloud-based updates like Gmail or your Tesla. A new feature just appears when you wake up in the morning and hop in. This is kind of an approach that's yet to become mainstream for a lot of enterprise devices. And I'll give you a specific example. When our first version of our product does not have something we call stretch cluster, an availability feature, very cool for a lot of organizations. Stretch cluster can be delivered entirely in the cloud control plane. And so literally a customer will wake up in the morning, they will have stretch cluster as a part of their infrastructure. There are people on traditional arrays who have a stretch cluster feature available, but by virtue of the process of updating their arrays, it's out for 2 years before they actually have access to it. Super bad. We changed that totally. The I/O path software, which sits on the SPU in the server, by definition is just a tiny amount of code because it needs to be very fast, right? And should an SPU micro update be needed, it's done in seconds, it's infrequent, totally non-disruptive, very simple to schedule. So a different world from that perspective. So always up to date. The third thing that I think folks would expect, since we're talking about a cloud-based approach, is global insights with AI-based administration. And so here's what we mean by that. We collect tens of thousands of server, storage, and application metrics per hour and analyze that across the entire customer infrastructure. We then combine, AI ops with centralized infrastructure management, so application owners get versatile reporting by geography. I want to see what's going on in my Reading data center. By application, only show me my containerized database environment, or other customizable filters. And not only do you get the necessary tooling for real-time detection of these latent issues, but you get the facilities to correct them. So, you're not just pointing to the fire, you can now put it out, right? The other thing that you get is this ability to query and control server, storage, and applications globally, right? Not one at a time. We also have kind of, to take it the next step in benefits, API-driven automation. And so effectively, we give you this single secure API endpoint with direct access to AI ops and administrative functions we just talked about, so that app owners can fully automate their entire application infrastructure, and you get all the multi-tenancy and security that their organization requires. So to recap, great economics, always up-to-date infrastructure, push of a button, done. Global insights with AI-based administration, and API-driven automation, okay?
Okay, and in terms of the broad storage landscape at the moment, how would you characterize your sales? Obviously, I think we probably chatted in the past that, when you elsewhere, about, traditional storage, and they're trying to catch up. There's cloud native storage, obviously. Where would you see yourselves in terms of a particular sector, or breaking new ground, etc.?
Yeah, I think, a lot of the existing storage solutions in the market, where they've tried to bring cloud into their solution, have done so in a way that's very much a kind of a cloud-based monitoring approach, and the administration is still on premises, very much tied to a cluster or an array or whatever. And back to my example, those solutions allow you to point to the fire. They do nothing about putting it out. And, that's just an incomplete service. We're really handling that end to end, and that's really just a starting point. What the way I kind of position what we're doing for folks, because there's a myriad of storage solutions in the market. You know, again, this is a very different approach from the perspective of the application owner. Cloud-defined storage is a path not just to self-service enterprise class storage, but actually self-service infrastructure over time. So the app owner can fully take care of everything they need for their application themselves, super easy, fast, done. For infrastructure managers, this is all about time, right? By enabling self-service to other parts of the organization, cloud-defined storage gives these teams a way to reduce the time spent provisioning storage and administering specialized storage assets, and instead increase the time they can dedicate to high ROI projects, software development, and the like. Okay, so what we're fundamentally doing with cloud-defined storage is to democratize enterprise class storage for application owners, for infrastructure managers, to make it just the simple part of the data center fabric, easily consumable, you know, for anyone who needs it.
Okay. And I presume in the sort of development phase, you've had some customers, beta trials and stuff. Can you share us any sort of feedback from how customers have, you know, reacted to your offering thus far?
Yeah, I think, you know, to be honest, the way we talk about our platform comes from the lips of our beta customers. You know, one of my favorite stories from the customer was the infrastructure owner of a very large SaaS company introduced us to his application owner colleague. And he was actually the one to describe what we were doing to the application owner. And in his words, he said, by taking advantage of cloud-defined storage, you will never need to deal with my team ever again. And he said it with glee, because for them, you know, provisioning is a multi-month workflow, and it's, you know, a relatively pain-filled process. And of course, in this new world, his application owner can go provision, you know, himself, you know, super fast. And, you know, our infrastructure owner is just there to kind of oversee it. And so, you know, that kind of feedback has been, you know, great and helped us really shape the conversation.
Excellent. And just before we close, I think right at the start, you mentioned about your, I think, research facility in Northern Ireland,
yeah,
and headquarters in the UK. But for us in Europe, can you give us a sort of flavor of sort of where and when? I presume you're rolling out through the channel, is that right? And how's that going to work?
Yeah, we are, to answer your go-to-market question first, we are rolling out through the channel and OEM server vendors, large IT infrastructure vendors. So the interesting thing for our customers, if they like what we're talking about here, you're going to just get a quote and purchase this through your favorite server vendor, and support contract, all of that through them. This is a server option from, you know, your server vendor. We are working, so of course we're working with our server OEMs and their sales teams, their channel partners locally. To get to your question about, you know, our presence in EMEA, so our UK-based subsidiary, Nebulon Limited, was established in 2019. It's just over a year old. It's home for our EMEA Development Center in Belfast. Belfast has great access to, you know, a lot of engineering talent from the local universities and other large tech companies who've made a home there. It also affords us to have this opportunity to have important cloud security and storage engineering happening close to our European customer base, both in proximity and time zone. Nebulon Limited is also home to our EMEA headquarters in London. We've got, you know, very strong commercial team there led by Tim Pitcher, who heads sales, Martin Cooper, who leads our solution architect team. And we see, you know, both engineering and commercial teams growth, you know, significant growth coming there in the near term. So yeah, super excited about what we have going in Europe.
Well, that's brilliant. And I think you and I might be speaking again as part of the webinar we're organising in a couple of weeks' time. But before we finish, is there any other comments, or we covered most of the main points?
No, I think, you know, for those, you know, giving a listen, if you want to know more, dive deeper, there's, you know, lots on the website. And so definitely have a look. Reach out to any one of us, or, you know, hit the website for a demo. I think what we would love to do at this stage, since what we are doing is pretty different, is, you know, give an opportunity for, you know, for the listeners here to kind of see it in action. And don't take my word for it, but, you know, give it a try, check out a demo, talk to some of the folks who've built the product, and you know, judge for yourself. If it helps, we'd love to talk and go from there.
That's brilliant. Well, thanks very much for your time, Craig. Thanks very much.
All right.